It's story time.
Welcome to our final story time of 2020. I gotta tell you, this has not gone exactly as I expected and hoped. Storytime was born from a desire for connection, and 2020 has been all about finding ways to connect in a state of disconnection, a state of even panic and fear. So in some ways, Storytime did just that. It created a commitment for me to show up in connection, in authentic transparency. But on the same notion, I couldn't do what I wanted to do, what I intended to do, which was to introduce you to people who inspire me, to hear their stories, hence the name Storytime. So I thought I'd take today to just come back to the grounding, back to the foundation of a life's work, yoga. And that is the question of why yoga. In fact, 2020 as a whole has pushed and challenged me in ways I never could have imagined. What I had intended Storytime to do was to create a space, a consistent, regular showing up for myself, to be here to share stories, not just my stories, and certainly not my delusional underpinnings of inadequacy or struggle that this year has been, but more significantly to introduce you to people who inspire me, to real life people who are living with inspiration intimately through their life's work, through their daily chores and toils. And what happened, of course, is that with the pandemic and the shutdown, I couldn't connect in real time with real people. And so I looked to ways in which to continue to cultivate authentic connection with you by showing up myself. And I have done that. And I honestly am both proud of myself and relieved that we have come to the end of 2020 in terms of Storytime. Not because Storytime doesn't have value, and not because it hasn't helped me to grow, and specifically helped me to clarify why it is that I do the work that I do. But it's also been one of those years, hasn't it? So thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to be transparent, to be authentic in how I serve my community, because it really is all about yoga. So in support of that premise, I want to take you back to the roots of Storytime, which is sharing the practices of yoga. Not everyone defines yoga in the same way. Meaning, not everyone defines yoga strictly as what happens on a yoga mat in a public practice of moving the body, asana postures. It is one component of what yoga is. But regardless of how you define or have experienced yoga, yoga is a way of being in the world. And it's the foundation to all that I do at Life's Work Yoga, not because it's all about the asana, but because it's all about the practice. It's about showing up in good times and in hard times. It's about doing the work, even when the work doesn't seem to be working, when the results aren't being returned. Because as the Bhagavad Gita encourages us, we do our dharma, not because of the rewards that we get in this life, not because of the rewards we get in return, but because it is what we are compelled to do. And that is Life's Work Yoga. That is Storytime as a component of the offering from Life's Work Yoga. So I want to share an excerpt with you today as we wrap up 2020 and Storytime. And it's from a book called Myths of the Asanas, which was written by one of my personal yoga teachers. And the question I wanted to particularly address today is why yoga? Why do I share yoga as the principle and the foundation practice? Why do I teach practice? Do I offer coaching? Do I offer trainings to help people integrate yoga principles and practices into daily life? Well, simply put, it's because it's what works for me. It's what worked for me in redefining and reshaping my life almost 18 years ago when I embarked on the yoga tradition. So this comes from the first chapter in Myths of the Asanas. Simply put, yogis embody the world. Using their bodies as tools, yogis put themselves into certain positions in order to understand the workings of the world around them. By doing so, they gain empathy, compassion, and sensitivity. Qualities that contribute to a more elevated state of mind known as chitta prasadanam in yogic scripture. The literal meaning of the Sanskrit word yoga is yoking or connecting. One way of describing the state of yoga is as a feeling of interconnectedness in which we experience that a part of us exists in everything and vice versa. To understand this more fully, we try to resemble everything we know in the universe through our asana practice. The introduction goes on to talk about how the asanas are named after sages and warriors, animals and plants. And yet it's embodying those shapes that we can take on the wisdom of those teachers, the plants, the animals, the sages, and those who have come before. Through yoga, we come to know the other as ourselves and ourselves as the other. The practice allows us the opportunity to dissolve the separation born from ego, along with the fear, cynicism, and isolation that sometimes go along with daily life. Feeling joy in coming to know the world, the journey of yogi begins. Subtle here in this text, but there is a difference between practicing yoga and embracing the path of yoga as a yogi. That's my work, is to live that path of yogi and to share it with as many of you who might need a guide, a companion, someone who will walk the path with you, to cheer you on, to encourage you to stay the course. It's not about perfection. It literally is a practice of showing up day after day, week after week, to do the things that we've been told work to help us live in greater alignment, to breathe, to move, to rest. This is the foundation of Life's Work Yoga. In fact, in light of 2020 and all of the challenges that we have all had to face, I have created a program called Yoga Living, simplifying all of these teachings into what can I do as a householder, as an everyday person, to live the practice of yoga and take personal ownership of my self-care routine. Specifically, yes, breathe, move, and rest, but integrating the practices and principles of yoga and the modern psychology and philosophy that influences and deepen the knowledge of our yoga tradition. That's Yoga Living. So if you'd like to learn more about Yoga Living, I have some free sessions this week for questions and answers to dive into what might keep you back from really embracing the path of the yogi. It's about living intimately with inspiration, and it's about showing up authentically to be your best self. The yoga path is the way to inspired living, and this is an opportunity for me to show you the way, the path, and to walk it with you. Thank you for sharing in story time. Thank you for being a part of my circle, my community. Here at Life's Work Yoga, we are committed to this work of sharing the practices and walking the path of yoga. And we look forward to doing that in 2021, right around the corner. So chime in, join us for a practice, join us for a circle. Message us to learn where it is that you can plug in to a community that's going to support and nourish you to show up for your authentic life. Be well. May you breathe deeply, move freely, labor lovingly, and live vibrantly. May you be well. Namaste. See you next year. Take care.